Well, welcome everybody. Thought Leader Friday with our friend Vlad Kats and my ever smart and beautiful sidekick, Debbie, who's here to introduce Vlad. So I'll let you go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, welcome guys. So excited to be here and be back on Thought Leader Friday. We've got my great friend Vlad Kats here. Vlad and I met probably 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah.
We were traveling the same circuit, building brokerages, and have remained friends throughout the years. I've really leveraged Vlad as a mentor to help me in my growth, personal growth and professional growth. So super excited to have you here today. I know I will not tell the Vlad story as well as you will, with as much spunk and humor as you will. So Vlad, tell all our listeners about you. Who is Vlad Kats?
Oh, how many hours do we have for this, Debbie?
Carry on, as long as you want.
Just kidding. So look, born and raised former Soviet Union, came to the United States about 13 years of age, did a bunch of, stuff, got myself somehow into college, then somehow into grad school, started a tech firm, United Power Tech, that's still around, got out of that, and then got into real estate. Debbie, I was bored. I don't know, if anybody has that type of experience. I was bored, and a bunch of buddies of mine, this is in mid zeros, a bunch of buddies of mine were flipping homes, and I said, why not? And so we built a small factory, if you will, of homes back then, and we were doing, buying for 30, putting in 30 grand, selling for 90 to 100, and we kept it going until, what was that thing called? Oh yeah, the market crashed, and then it kind of all stopped. I remember it just stopped. Okay. By the way, the way that it's going right now is kind of reminding me of a little bit of that, and I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk about that. But from there, I went into distressed properties. I worked with a real estate fund. We acquired about 300 doors in Baltimore City. Then I started a short sale processing company, a short sale sales team. We did about 100 short sale, a little bit over 100 short sales per year. Prior to that, I had my own real estate team that I shifted into short sales. And then in 2014, was blessed to be a part of a really cool group that started the first KW brokerage here in my neck of the woods, right outside of Baltimore. A few months later, a few months after the launch, I raised my hand to become the team leader of that brokerage. And my team and I took it from about 50 agents to about 435 months. That was a wild ride. Then started another one, bought a third. And then as of about 6 months ago, my career shifted, and I'm now at eXp Realty, building a nationwide network of top-minded real estate professionals. Personally, married. Kristen is awesome. If you're watching, I love you, honey. And we have 3 amazing, most of the time amazing, little girls. Sloan is 11, Liv is 8, and Reagan, who's the mayor of the house, is 4. So does that kind of paint a picture?
Yeah, it does.
Oh, I forgot. I owned and ran one of the top expansion teams in the country.
Very good. Yeah, I was talking with Vlad before we got on the call, and I was talking about, I have 3 daughters as well, as most of you know, and his are a lot younger than mine being 18, 16, and 12. And I said, just stay steady with the hair and drama, and once the mayor, always the mayor. Just get used to it. My poor husband just sits on the couch with the white flag consistently, and we make it work.
Debbie, it's oftentimes people ask me how do you remain so calm under stress, and I'm like, dude, I have 3 girls at home.
My favorite line is when they say they start bringing me drama to coaching calls, or in my recruiting, and that's when you start getting office drama. And I always say, you know what, guys, if I want drama, I'll go home. I don't need it at work too, right?
Well, now with COVID, I can't even say that, Debbie. So thanks a lot, because I am home all the time.
Well, I know it is. You got desks. I got my foyer is now my foyer is now a school classroom. Believe it or not, I used to have this cute little table with decorations, and now it's got a desk with drawers and pencil cans and pictures on the wall. So, you know what? We all adjust, and that's what we're doing right now in this crazy 2020. We're adjusting. And so, with that being said, over the past year, we've seen a lot of disruptions. We've seen a lot of distractions. Those are the the keywords a lot of people ping on for disruptions, distractions, like you said, the market boom and the market crash, all in there. So what do you see? What are you talking to your agents about, or what are you seeing outside of low inventory? Because I think that's like that catchphrase, oh, it's low inventory. What else is out there that you're seeing that might impact agents' markets here in the near future, as well as how are they able to overcome those? What key pieces should they be putting into place?
Well, I think it's look, there is, and I love the disruptions equals distractions, and distractions can equal disruptions, right? Like they're very similar terms. And look, there is disruptions happen all the time. Oftentimes, like I'll put it to you this way: my experience in the tech world is that when agents, most people, when they say disruption, it's already too late. Like it's already been disrupted. It's kind of like that tornado in the middle of the ocean, and by the time the waves are 6 foot high on the beach in North Carolina, it's like it's already happened. These are just the waves. Mm-hmm. So I think that in real estate, we're kind of, as real estate professionals, we're not in the disruption. We're feeling the waves of a disruption, which could give a kind of a different, could potentially give a different mindset. But what I'm seeing right now with real estate professionals is that, first of all, I think that there's a lot of really great mindset that's happening, from pivot to shift. Things are definitely changing. COVID accelerated a lot of change. But I think that very few people are actually focusing on what's going to happen a year or two from now.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's because the market's so great, Vlad. I mean, I'm doing better than I was now than I was January.
Yeah, and that's a really good distraction. That's what typically happens in bubbles. Now, I am not here. I'm not a doomsday type of guy. I just look at the reality of it. And, if anybody can say like, okay, is this sustainable? And they can say yes, like, I would like to have that conversation and see the data, not just opinion. So I think that, and predominantly what I do now is I spend time with the top real estate associates in their markets. So where they have this, unique perspective. And what is that unique perspective? One is they have, lead generation systems dialed in. They have people systems dialed in or almost dialed in. I guess those are never dialed in fully. But they're experiencing, unlike a solo real estate professional, they're actually able to experience multiple sides of what's going on. Does that make sense? It's kind of like a solo real estate professional will say, oh, I need more listings, right? Whereas a top producing, somebody who's doing a couple of 100, 300 units per year, they can say like, no, look, we got listings, but we're underpricing them. What does that mean? Because we're going like way overpriced. Okay, and then, okay, how do we turn this one listing into 4 other listings? Mm-hmm. Okay, so they're a slightly different conversation amongst different groups.
It sounds to me like they're asking themselves better questions outside of the here and now. Like you said, I need more listings, and that's great. Listing inventory is low. We get it. But they're asking themselves, like you said, okay, I do have this listing. How are we going to generate 4 additional pieces of business off of this listing? I have this support staff person. How are we going to get this person to generate additional revenue or additional systems for our team? It sounds to me like it's better question asking of themselves and their teams.
A lot better, Debbie. And I know you do that with your clients. It's, a job of a really great consultant or a coach is to go in and ask a bunch of questions, right? Because questions expose blind spots. When you start thinking about something, you're like, hold on a second. I've never thought about it that way. Or, you know what? I've never thought about it, period, which is, forget about it. It can be a really big eye opener. The interesting thing that I'm seeing is that when any real estate agent is in that swirl, in that rat race, which essentially what we're having right now is like, and by the way, I was an economist for Department of Labor, like in my previous life. So I was trained to look at like macro levels. And what we're seeing is like this compression of markets, all like in few months. And then the gasoline of any real estate market is the interest rates. Free money. right? So everybody's running, showing houses, which is awesome, okay? But they're not relating to it like a squirrel would relate to like collecting the nuts and putting them in the ground, right? Getting ready for winter, which
Right.
is kind of like, during the bloom season, that's what's happening. Or
Right.
bears, I know these probably are weird like analogies. I'm looking at Bill's face and Bill's like, bears, squirrels.
He's from South Carolina.
Thanks a lot, Vlad. This is Thought Leader Friday, not like zoologist.
Well, I figured you were about to add that to your resume as well. You're a tech guy, you're an economist, you've run real estate firms. What have you not done, man?
With little
You're a
girls, we watch a
veterinarian.
lot.
Yeah.
We watch a lot of animal stuff, right? So, like Daniel Tiger, for example.
Right.
And it's when you relate to it, let's cultivate as much as possible because something is happening. Well, now something is going to happen, whether it's 6 months from now, whether it's 3 months from now. Like, it is what it is. It's just not sustainable. But then you're in a different mindset, and I don't see and hear that mindset. It's like we by the way, Debbie, we definitely forgot 2008 and Bill, like as an industry, and it's not surprising because most of the industry players right now came in after that time. So they don't even have the recollection. They have it like a memory, like, oh yeah, World War II did happen. I saw it on pictures, right? They didn't experience it. So it's a different mindset, but man, that mindset is what helps you get through the next and the next and the next and the next. All right. I digress.
So let's actually, I think this is a brilliant point you're making. So let's stick on this for a second, because one of the things Debbie and I talk about a lot, and our other coaches and our clients, is that there are a lot of folks in the industry right now who didn't get punched in the mouth in the last downturn because they weren't in it. And that's not a criticism. That's just an observation. People were doing different things. And so two-part question. Number one is, if I was not in the business then, which I was, however, if I was not, what advice would you give me? And then if I was in it and I have that recollection and I want to be really prudent as I move forward over the next 12, 18, 24 months, what would you advise me to do?
So I'll answer your first one first. And that would be, if you have not been in the last downturn, go talk to 5 people who have. And just get really real with like, all right, what was it like? And then collect those points of data so you can start looking for it. Like, look, I remember like back then I was flipping houses. And I remember this one house in Dundalk, Maryland, okay, where we were like, I think we had it listed for like 270, okay? And the offer came in at like 268. And we were like, no, we want full price. Like, it was something like that right now I'm considering silly. And we literally did not make it happen over like 1% or something, okay? Or like some weird, like some term or something. And then Monday hit and we started hearing these like rumblings. We sold that house for like 234 a month later. And it took everything to sell that house. So it's like, once you start hearing these stories, you start looking out for that type of stuff. Like, I have, buddies call me like who are like practicing real estate, like here in Baltimore. It's like, hey, what should I do? Like, the buyer is giving me a hard time. I'm like, look, do whatever you can. You're selling it at like a peak. Figure out, like, I know that they have like 50 points on that inspection. Figure it out. Do not lose it right now, because you don't know what's going to happen a month or 2 from now. You just don't. So that's the first part. The second is, how do I prepare myself? None of this is going to be new. First, I start with a mindset. Something is going to happen, but not like from a fear perspective. It's just a reality. Like, sun is going to go down. So like, if I operate as if sun is always up, like, I'm going to be in trouble. Because there's going to be dark and like I'm going to need a flashlight or I need electricity. Sun is going to go down. So we've already taken precautions for that, if you will. So like the next 18 or 24 months, I would be sucking money away. Okay. Now, not necessarily just like cash, because, if we get into macroeconomic trends and potential inflation that may be coming, then that's a different conversation. but I would be putting money away, cutting expenses, figuring out what I can cut fast, unlike, let's say, a Zillow contract, if it's a 12-month contract, right? And getting myself prepared. One of the things that I learned from wealthy individuals, this may have been even like in leadership at the previous company, I'm sure it was, it's operate as if you're in the next phase of the market. And nobody can disagree that we're at or around the peak, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
like, so just a question whether we're on one side or the other. I hope that answers, Bill.
Yeah, definitely does.
I look at it too, Vlad, like you're saying, at or near the peak. You know, we're seeing I was in the market. I got in the industry back in 2002. And, you know, we were seeing the 2000s, I was in Orlando. So we saw 2006, 2007, that really strong peak. And we are above that now in what homes are selling for from what they sold for in 2006 and 7. So these people that even bought at the peak are able to get out and have equity, right, that they didn't pay for. So, you know, for those people that are going, oh, let me see what next spring brings. Again, I'm not preaching, but probably if you're looking at next spring, that's only 6 months. Let's go ahead and make some changes, right?
Yeah. It's weird. Look, there's my wife sent me a podcast today, London Real with Robert Kiyosaki. And Robert Kiyosaki just put out a new book called Fake. Talks about fake money, fake teachers, fake assets. So it was a preview of the book. And it's clear that the waves of macroeconomy are not favorable. The only question are not favorable to most, I should say, because there's a lot of people who will benefit, and we want to start positioning ourselves. So that to add to your, the second question, Bill, is want to position yourself to take advantage of the next market, because there's always the next market. You just rarely take advantage of that if you're just caught flat-footed.
Yeah. One more quick thought or question on the market, and then we can transition into some of the next key points that Debbie has. And I'd like for you, if you don't mind, to delineate from your perspective the differences that you see between 2006 through 2010, depending on what market the listeners were in, and today, just so they're clear that we're not saying that they're the same. We're saying, though, that we are at or near a peak, and that we should be mindful of what lives on the other side of that. Yeah,
no downturn. Like it's interesting you say that, Bill. Like in the last 6 months, what I've been studying are I've been looking at, and I'm a cash flow quadrant fan.
Sure.
Kiyosaki's book, right? And I'm focusing, and I'm a freedom guy, freedom chaser, if you will. So freedom exists in the I quadrant. The question is, how do you get there? And so what I've been studying, and I've been actually talking to a lot of friends who know a lot more about the investment arena and macroeconomy. So I've been looking at, like, what do really seasoned investors look at, and then what causes a crash. And no two crashes are caused by the same thing. Okay, so in 2008, one of the things that caused it was just total, like, relaxation of rules how money can be made in mortgages. You could trace it back to signatures by our former presidents on, like, who can buy a house, what does FHA mortgage look like, what does Fannie and Freddie, what do they look like, where are the incentives, and all of that stuff. So it was essentially a lot of greed that, and by the way, everybody was involved in it. It's not just Wall Street. Okay, they just ended up making the most money from it. So that was my evaluation, is that that's what caused that, like, because people were buying houses that were not supposed to be buying houses. And then on top of that is all of those mortgages were packaged into something that nobody should be buying or selling.
Right.
But because transaction fees keep rolling in, it just makes sense.
Sure.
What we're experiencing today is something completely different. What we're experiencing today is a combination. It actually stems back from 71, when Nixon took us off the gold standard, And we, US dollar went from a banknote to a currency, fiat currency to be more exact. And it allowed the US government and other governments around the world just to keep printing money. So how did we get out of 2008 recession? Is US government just printed a lot of money, but it catches up to you. So right now what we're experiencing, COVID just facilitated it to happen a lot faster, like the run up. So now we're printing a lot more money. So what's inevitable is once you keep printing money, something has to happen. Either inflation goes through the roof or it all goes bust and deflation sets in, and I think we're getting too deep into that. So it's two different.
You're not getting too deep for me. We could talk about this stuff all day.
All right.
However, we might be losing some people out there right now.
Sorry, I interrupted myself. My bad, Bill. So there are two different things. This one is being caused by too much available money. Like think about it, like 2.5 for a 30-year fixed, 2.75 for a 30-year fixed.
Right.
You can't even get a car loan for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. Well,
and sorry about that.
Well, I mean, you make a great point there because it was more printed money than the entire GDP for the quarter. So anyway.
And by the way, when you look at the history, it's like there's been more money printed in the last decade than there's been ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. All right, Debbie's calling a 30-second timeout so we can change gears because we might be here a while otherwise. All right, Debbie, let's change gears. What do you want to talk about next?
Yeah, no, Vlad brought up a really valid point when we were talking about his children and how he's now virtual and at home and just like everyone else is. And we're seeing that across the board, even with our large teams where they're having to go virtual with their agents, they're having to change standards, accountability, motivation, and even keeping that team culture alive, all while still working to build that business. What are you seeing out there from that perspective? What are you seeing with your communication of your top agents that's working? How are we keeping people moving in the right direction instead of being on the chopping block because they're not doing their job?
It's so as leaders pre-COVID, we relied too much on sight and proximity. Today, we actually have to rely on KPIs. So like and by the way, I fell into that trap myself. And pre-COVID, I was an office guy. I swore by the office. I'm like, get people in the office. Like, unless you're sick, you're coming into the office. I don't care how far you are. Like, I was that like dictator. And what I realized is that the productivity of people who worked with me was a byproduct of me seeing or hearing them. Which is, by the way, like if your watchers, listeners, they think about it like, okay, how do you know somebody is doing a great job? Well, you usually go to like, well, they come into office every day at 8:30. They lead generate and they script practice. Well, how do you know that? I see them. They're talking to buyers and sellers all the time. They just met with 4 buyers. How do you know that? I was in the office. Okay, like it's sight and proximity. Well, guess what COVID did? It's like, unless you put a camera in somebody's room, which would be like violation of probably like 15 like codes of something, right? It's like, you don't know. So you actually have to lead through management. And that comes down to numbers. And so like, okay, how do you get people to report the numbers? Well, if they never reported the numbers, good luck. You're going to be in a guessing game rather than a visual game. So it's kind of like, when you're in the dark, one of your senses is off, your eyesight is off. So you have to like, your smell enhances, your touch like all of that stuff. So that's what a lot of leaders are being forced to do in this virtual environment, because you can't see and you can't feel the people. Now, the flip side of that is that we're pack animals. I cannot imagine being alone in my house for months. Like luckily I have enough drama and, my wife here. So like, at least it's entertainment and I get my, serotonin or oxytocin levels, when I hug and, play with my kids. But like, if you don't, then that's how people fall into like, they become depressed. So then as a leader, you have to watch out for that as well, because you are responsible for their well-being, at least their financial well-being. So again, it has to, like, you have to start looking for signs that you've never looked for before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all while in the dark. So
Yeah.
you mentioned KPIs, and I know what KPIs are, but I'd love for you, for our listeners, to define KPIs and what are some of those metrics that you're putting into place, or that you're seeing top agents put into place if they are in that boat of, we never really did a high level accountability because we could see it. What are some of those indicators that they're
You know, I probably would not be like the best guy. Like one of my buddies, Sean, is like a Sisu guy, and he's got everything on there. So like I see a lot of teams going to these types of like easy to input metrics, from a number of contacts, right? Because look, when it comes to key performance indicators, there's leading and lagging, right? Typically, we know we're doing good when there is money in the bank. Well, that's so lagging that it's not, you know, it's not even in the conversation. Or closings or pendings. Those are really easy to measure. But how do you predict how many you're going to have? When COVID was starting, it was like everything was out the window. Today, everything is in the window because of how hot the market is, right? But normalize the market, and you have to actually predict your business if you're running like a business. So, I mean, just some real basic ones is, you know, conversations had, appointments set. It's, you know, nothing is new. The question is, and look, this is, yeah, like I remember from running brokerages, is working with a lot of real estate agents is oftentimes can be like herding cats. All right. And, you know, if there are any real estate agents watching, I apologize. I'm just kidding. I know that there's real estate agents watching, but sometimes it's like herding cats, right? Because look, accountability, we often look for accountability in a person. Here's what I learned about accountability. Two things. One is, number one is you cannot make anyone accountable. They're either accountable or they're not. Number two is it's about accountability systems and whether or not people are using it. And then you can see who's accountable, who's not.
Yeah.
Is that helpful?
I think, no, it's super helpful. We lost Debbie's feed for a second. She'll be back with us in a little bit. So let's tie this though to a topic that we covered in the call prep for this, and let's kind of transition this into the leadership team building element of things. So you can take that in any direction you want. And the reason I'm sort of bringing this topic here is the vast majority of people that we coach, and I would assume most of the people on this, are either in the process of building teams or running teams. And so take that in sort of the direction of both maybe self-leadership and leadership of others, and what you've seen to be the best practices there.
Oof, I mean, Bill, that's such a wide open question. Right. I think that, and I'll kind of start with this, with just a learning of my own through this journey, is there is a lot of pressure on growth. There's a lot of pressure on business growth, and and many people are not responsible just for the conversation. It's gonna sound weird, Bill. It's all right. I'm trying to be nice.
Don't worry about being nice. Just say what you can say what you need to say.
Okay. So look, growth for growth's sake is a waste of time.
Right.
Most real estate professionals, and I think most business owners or most practice owners, sales practice owners, are in have an affinity for just growth.
Right.
And then you have this uncontrolled, unbounded. It's not even. It's for a sake of what? And I think that when you start with an end in mind, as cliche as that sounds, and you understand what does that actually mean, and like what does your business need to look like in order for you to create the life for you, for your children, for your future generations, or for your communities, what does that look like? Then growth becomes a function of that.
Sure.
Okay. So I think that one of the recommendations I would make is like, look, if you're building a business, if you're hiring people, start with, okay, growth in order for what? Okay. And then another thing is, I had a really great coach when I was in production myself, and he taught me, like, because I came to him and I was like, all right, I want to build a team. I want to build the biggest team in Maryland. And he was like, all right, Vlad, do you want to build a team or do you want to build a business? And I was like, you're right, Tony. Like, I want to build a business, and then the team becomes a function of that. See, oftentimes I think, actually, I'll leave it at that because I want to get through some of our questions.
Well, you make such a great point, and maybe we can hang here for a second, because I think we see this a lot in the industry, and what you're saying is very much in line with the way that we approach this. Is we come into it from this point of view that everyone is aspiring to reach what we refer to as their freedom of choice moment. And that's just the day at which they wake up and say, I get to choose today. Do I go to work or do I not go to work? And if I want to work, I do it because I like it. And if I don't and I want to go fishing, I go fishing. And I've built a business that allows me to do that. And then everything rolls backwards from that. And we just think it's super dangerous that everybody starts looking at sort of faux leaderboards and chases those without regard to why the hell they're doing it to begin with. So what you're saying resonates really, really well with us. So let's say I'm sitting at home right now and I'm thinking, all right, I got that part figured out. I know why I'm doing this. How do I go find some of the best people to align myself with? So you've been consistently one of the top recruiters in the entire real estate business. So how do you attract talented people to your organization?
Good. All right. Glad to answer that. So let me just go half a step back. So it's when somebody's looking for growth, my invitation for them is to actually define growth of what. I think that you kind of implied it, Bill, is, in this industry, there's hyper focus on the top line, right? And top lines rarely transcend into bottom lines in this particular industry. Right. In most industries, yes, especially publicly traded businesses, those have to align for shareholders. But in the real estate businesses, oftentimes, and in an expansion world, I looked at a lot of P&Ls. It's not a direct correlation. So my recommendation is profit growth, because that's what gets you to freedom of choice moment. Right. And it's funny, I call it, like, in our network, we actually have Freedom Fridays, which is today that I lead, and we have a freedom number. Right. It's the number that allows you to get to time freedom, where you can do anything that you want with anyone that you want at any time that you want. There you go. I'm so glad that you coach your clients on the same thing. So now, all right. So there is when we talk about recruiting or growth of numbers of people on the team, right? And by the way, just because you have a lot of real estate agents on your team does not mean that you have high profitability. So I want to dissect that.
Say that again so everybody can hear that one more time.
Yeah, just number of real estate agents on your team does not have to equal your profitability, which is actually the profitability number is what gets you to the freedom of choice day or freedom of choice number. Okay. Now, so when we're looking at recruiting, there is what's collapsed right now in the industry is the context for recruiting. See, when you're running a brokerage, it's very different than when you're running a real estate team. And here's how I kind of a way that I've found to explain it. So as a brokerage owner, and do you have brokerage listeners? Or should we just focus on it?
We do. Yeah, we got both.
So if you're a brokerage owner, you are the mayor of the city, kind of like my, youngest daughter, mayor of our household. Like, you're the mayor. So if you become a mayor, how do local governments get paid? Through taxation. Okay. So as a broker owner, you're the mayor and you collect tax from your agents, quote unquote tax. That's where the company dollar comes in. So you're like, are there any mayors in the world that would say, don't come into my city? No, it'd be weird, because every mayor in the world wants to increase their tax base. Okay. Now, what I'm seeing, which is like, I'm like dumbfounded by that oftentimes, is when real estate team owners put on a mayor hat and just bring everybody in, bring everybody in, bring everybody in.
Right.
Because as a real estate team owner, you're actually a business owner inside of a city. And you're not increasing your tax base. You're actually paying people to be on your team. It's kind of like employees, but without, you know, the legality of it, because everybody's an independent contractor typically. Okay. By the way, side note, when I ran my short sale business, it was all W-2s. It was all W-2, no salespeople. Okay. Maybe different conversation. So it's so when you put on a hat of an employer, you're paying people. So do you want as many employees as possible? Like, do you ever have like a business owner or an employer say like, man, I just need to hire a bunch of people. How's your business? Don't worry about it. I'm just gonna like, we just need to hire a bunch of, yeah, but like, how's your profit? Dude, we're just gonna go hire, but you're paying them, dude,
Right.
it's gonna be good. Like, I got this. Like I know I'm making it humorous just to drive home kind of the point, but when you have a team owner whose focus should be profitability, just like any business owner, it's not about hiring as many people as possible. It's about creating the biggest bottom line possible. Now, here's the thing: is in the real estate industry, team owners rarely pay sales agents. Aside from Redfin, there's nobody doing W-2s, right? So they think that because they don't have to pay them, then they're actually not paying them. But guess what?
Yeah.
You know that they're paying them in time, energy, opportunity cost, 100 leads sent that you paid for, at 10 or 20 bucks a lead that you sent to somebody who ignored it is a cost, is a real cost. So you're paying them. So, all right, so that's the dichotomy. Now, on the real estate brokerage side, it comes down to the number of agents. Okay. Now you have to provide an environment of productivity, a culture of productivity. Okay. So it's kind of like in the mayor's example, you got to make sure there's not a lot of crime, right? Or no crime, and that, there are good schools and stuff like that. But people go in and out. The mayor of the city is not going to go in and say like, Bill, like, how come your kids are going virtual? We need them in. Or like, how come like your kid got a B on the exam? It'd be weird. Okay. So there's this distance. So you create the environment, then you bring as many people as possible. Like Debbie and I did that, fairly well in our previous system, right? Like, and then that equates to profitability, because the higher the tax base, the higher the profitability.
Right. Okay.
Now on the team side, it's not about the numbers. It's actually about productivity.
Right.
So instead of 20 people who are doing 2 transactions a year, like how about you have 5 people who are doing 20 transactions a year? Or something like that, right? Like whatever. By the way, they're going to stay longer. Now, here's what I learned in recruiting, both to teams and to brokerages. There is one reason there's many reasons, but the most important reason why people, real estate professionals or otherwise, why they join your organization. And it's the top one is to reach their financial goals. How do I know that? Well, if you have an assistant who loves working for you, like she loves you or he loves you, like they work 7 days a week, 12-hour days. See how long they last once you stop paying them. I know it's silly, but like most broker owners and team members forget about it. So the first question is, what is your financial goal? And then that person starts associating you with the environment that's going to help you reach that financial goal. Are there other things? Culture is important. Absolutely. I'm not saying culture is not important, but here's what I do know. There's a lot of Americans right now who are working in poor cultures.
It's true.
So Culture is important. It's just not as important as making money. And as a business owner, or as a broker owner, or as a team owner, we might as well just talk about it right away. By the way, the reason people leave your organization, also learned it a while ago and experienced it all over the place. 2 reasons people leave your organization. Reason number 1 is they don't reach their financial goals. That's like the fastest way to lose somebody. Number 2, most don't get there, but number 2 is they do reach their financial goals, but they don't associate their success with your environment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I'm listening to this and I'm gonna like shut up and breathe and ask another question, but it's like if you're listening to this, is the question I'd be asking is, do I know my people's goals? And the answer is no. Go find out.
Yeah,
just go find out.
Yeah. Well, you're hitting on another key point of the way that we approach this, and I'm going to hand it to Debbie for a couple more questions before we wrap up. Is we see so many businesses sit on high with some goal and then force it down the organization, as opposed to asking the goals at the lower levels of the organization to add them all up and make sure they align with the goal at the top.
Yeah,
we all have been in that position before.
Yeah, I used to say that, look, the only thing you can discriminate in hiring is goals. Like you could be sitting with let's say I have a goal of doing 100 transactions a year, and I know I'm not going to do it. So I'm going to bring on 5 real estate professionals, 5 agents doing 20 transactions each. And somebody comes in and says, my goal is 10. They could be great, but it doesn't fit with my goal. I'm not going to adjust my goal for somebody else's.
Right.
And it just creates weird dynamics on the team.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Yeah.
Debbie.
Yeah.
Debbie, what you got? Welcome back.
No, I think this is great because again, it goes back to that knowing your people, right? Knowing what they're looking for specifically and making sure that you're able to provide the tools and systems for them to reach those goals, right? That's value. But then what would be some other ways that they could help tie back success to their team, right? So you're right, you do have agents that say, and typically why they leave teams, they're hitting their goals and they say, well, none of this has to do with anything that you're doing for me. I can go do it on my own.
Yeah.
So what do we as team leaders or business owners need to be doing or providing or saying or communicating to our people so that they can start to correlate those 2 things together?
We actually need to point to that. Like,
do you really tell them, like have a conversation?
Well, I mean, look, it's not like a conversation. Like you can make a conversation about you, and here's what it will sound like. So I'm you. I'm saying, Debbie, I'm so glad that you're winning. Just to let you know, you're winning because of me. Like, tell your husband that, you guys are lucky that you're with me. Congratulations. We're good. I wouldn't say that,
yeah, sure.
Right? And I'm not thinking that. But see, when I look at any successful organization, it's actually some form of a partnership. Because I take the perspective is when it's like Zig Ziglar's approach, when I help enough people get what they want, and like the way I say it, when I help enough people get to their goal, I'll get to mine, right? So then the partnership, you and me, is I'm helping you reach your goal so you can help me reach my goal. So it'll be a conversation like, Debbie, like, oh my God, like you had a goal of 20 transactions this year. You're about to close your 21st. Thank you so much for the opportunity for me that you provided for me to and using all of our systems to reach that goal. Like, I'm really proud to have you in this organization because I really am. Like, if I'm making it about your goals, that will help me reach mine. Mm-hmm. See, we talked about earlier is that level of authenticity. It's like you can see right away, like when a team leader is after themselves or whether they're there to help people.
Yeah, yeah.
And by the way, there's nothing wrong with being about themselves. You just have to be real upfront and honest about it. Like,
right.
You're a cog in my machine, but I'm going to pay you really well. And, and I'm going to create a 401k for you so you can never leave. And you just have to be all right with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and it's called the Golden Handcuffs, right? We've experienced those in times too. Many of us out there have. When you think about those the goals and accountability, right? So I always say, without action, a goal is a wish, right?
Yeah.
Now we're starting to see where agents are experiencing success, and we are having to go to a different level of accountability because we can no longer see the number of agents coming in, or buyers or sellers coming in, and that sort of thing. And so we're clamping down a little bit on accountability, where that's coming back as micromanagement.
Well, yeah, I'm a recovering micromanager, so it's that's an easy conversation. So look, micromanagement is not about them. Micromanagement is about me feeling secure, feeling safe. Accountability, it's like I mentioned earlier. Look, somebody's either accountable or they're not. That's it. Like, you're not going to make anybody accountable. The best that you can do is you can make someone, or enroll someone, or entice someone, or incentivize someone to use your accountability system. So here's an example of incentivization, negative incentivization to use an accountability system. Bill, unless you use our CSU tracker, I'm not affiliated with CSU, but the second time I'm mentioning it, unless you're using our CSU tracker, you will get 0 leads. Okay. Now you're seeing what the person is doing or not doing. So you just, my experience is that the best thing to do with leadership is just practice it. But you have to be like this open-minded leader, where when you see the conversation not going your way, don't make it about the other person. Make it about your ineffectiveness in that conversation. My good buddy, business partner, Devin Doherty, talks about this a lot. I don't remember exactly what he says, but he kind of like takes away this right, wrong, and he puts in effective, ineffective. So if I'm having a conversation with you about your performance, Debbie, and you walk away like not empowered, that's not on you, that's on me. And I just had an ineffective conversation. So as leaders, we have to start paying attention to how are we leaving our people and make it about us.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I want to lean in a little bit on your recruiting experience, and have you, because one of the questions that we get, or topics that we cover quite often, are the ideal candidate for teams. And you mentioned the higher producing agent versus the agent that's going to do 10 deals a year. How are we going out? How are we coaching our, not how, but when you think about that ideal candidate, where are you going to find those people, and what do those conversations look like, coming from someone who probably recruited over 500 people to an organization?
I want to say it. Yeah, I mean, we were, how many did we, probably about that 1,000 or something like that. But it's so 2 things. First is the definition of that ideal agent profile is so important. So many people, like Bill and Debbie, you'd be surprised. People ask me about, like, all right, how do I have that conversation? And that's really important. But the most important conversation is conversation with yourself. Okay. So I don't give out scripts, and I may like say something that's scripty, but it's once you're crystal clear on your IAP, okay, the ideal agent profile, suddenly they start opening up. Like they come from everywhere. So depending on the value prop of the team, and brokerage, you can exchange those words as you see. Once you're clear on the value that you provide, you then work in the ideal agent profile based on that value. So for example, if my value is leads, okay, let's just say, well, then I would want somebody who values that value. So my ideal agent profile may be somebody who's brand new, okay, or somebody who's only been working with buyer agents and loves working with buyer agents, because I know that most of my internet leads are going to be buyer specific. So then you're actually tailoring your value prop to them. Okay. And how does that translate? Well, in your job post, you're going to be talking directly into somebody who's going to value your value proposition. Like, there's so much focus right now happening on leads that I think that word gets devalued, as an example, right? or like on the job training. Like people like now need to be hearing it as if like they don't even value that anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. And so for real estate team owners, get clear on the first conversations with yourself. What is my value proposition? Then you write out the ideal agent profile that's going to value your value proposition. And then you turn that into a conversation and you use that as a screener. See, when you have a mindset of I'm a business owner versus mindset of I'm a mayor and growing my tax base, you use all of that as a filter, not as a magnet. Use it as a detractor. Oh no, I don't work with leads. Okay, then it's not a fit. You can go to somebody else's team. All right, I'm gonna stop.
No, I love that. I love that. The first conversation is a conversation with yourself, because I think that's where, you know, a lot of our teams, as they're growing, the value of their team is also growing.
Yeah.
And having them be able to communicate the additional value that they're pouring into the team, one, to the team members, so the team members see, hey, here's 3 different things that we did this year to help you grow in your success. And now let's go deliver that to the masses, or this production population, or something that then, again, helps us understand the value. Because a lot of times as agents, we get so caught up in the day-to-day, I got to do another sale, another sale, another sale. We're not stopping to look at what value do we truly provide to someone. And I think, honestly, I think business owners discount the value that they bring. Like on the job training, how can, you know, looking at that, further define that, right? You don't go anywhere and not have on the job training, but what is it about your specific on the job training that you provide? I know for our clients, we developed a listing skills course, a buyer skills course, and a digital marketing skills course. So a lot of our teams are offering that as on the job training. That is not just, hey, you can shadow me for 6 weeks and then I'll give you your first client.
Very specific, benefit-driven conversations is what makes a difference for people. Mm-hmm. Very specific, benefits-driven. It's like, how is this going to benefit me in reaching my goals? That's so great. Like, yeah, that's so great.
And you also pinged on something else too, is it's okay to say no. If that 10 transaction agent comes into your world and that's not in your IAP, let them go. Let them be okay with saying that person's not for me.
Yep, because you're high. It's like when you take the approach that you're paying people, you're gonna have a high screen.
Yeah. All right, Bill, I'll let you wrap it up. What last question do you have for Vlad?
Well, I think, Vlad, I'll turn it back to you by saying, if you were to offer a single piece of advice, or multiple if you want to, because we've got a few minutes left here, advice to the listeners on what they should go take action on now, what would that be?
Woo. Action on now. So one thing I would do is I would, you know, if they're not with your coaching company, I would call you guys, like for one specific reason. Like if I'm you, I'm calling Bill or Debbie and saying, okay, take me through that, what'd you call it? Freedom of choice.
Freedom of choice. Yeah.
The freedom of choice, because like, look, that is brilliant. You see, I believe that business owners are I don't want to make a blanket statement, but business owners, people who are getting into real estate business or any business, once you ask them enough questions, so why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Right? Why is that important to you? You'll get to some kind of answer that has the F word in it, mm-hmm. right? The freedom word.
Right.
Yeah.
The other one too, sometimes.
Yeah. All right. So it's like if that is the reason why we're in business, and I believe that the purpose of the business is to support that great lifestyle or that great life. And by the way, lifestyle doesn't mean like luxury on the yacht. It's like could be given to congregations, churches, etc. Right? Like it's up to a person. So like starting there is a gift, because during the hard times, like during the easy times, like a lot of real estate professionals experiencing right now, it's easy to get through things. But during the hard times that were there and will definitely be there ahead, it's like, what's going to get you through it? I believe it's going to be that number and the word freedom tied to it, not just for you, but your family. So that would be like, that's a no-brainer.
Awesome.
That's
Thank
a
you.
no-brainer. And then the other thing that I would say is like, all right, figure out what are you going to do like in the next 3-6 months to grow yourself. And I know we kind of talk about this a lot, like growing yourself. By the way, it also is getting diluted, that whole growth mindset. And I pay attention to language, like, being an immigrant, whatever, I'm not going to go into detail there, but I pay attention to it, and like word like opportunity is diluted already. Like growth also, it's like, oh yeah, everybody's growing. It's like, we don't inspect it. But my recommendation is get really clear with your coach on like, what does growth actually look like for you? Like individually, do not buy into the herd mentality.
Yeah.
So those are the two things that jump out.
Good stuff.
We talked about so many things already. So
yeah, we covered a ton of ground today. A lot of great stuff. Debbie, what would you leave us with, or you want to go ahead and wrap us up?
Yeah, I think I'd love to wrap us up. I think, first of all, Vlad, thank you again so much for your time. Your wealth of knowledge and information has been, I'm sure, proven valuable to many of our listeners. And as this goes out through our Facebook pages, I'm sure many more will take advantage of what you have to offer. So if you're ever in Baltimore, go check Vlad out and so connect with him.
Yeah,
all right.
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Vlad. Good to see you, my friend.
The same here, Bill. Debbie, thank you for the opportunity. Bill, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yes,
Definitely.
good to see
See
you.
you soon. Bye.
Bye.